You're welcome to Fundamentals of Entrepreneurship once again, and it's been a delight to have you through all these 10 sessions. We're in session 9 as I speak, at session 11 as I speak, and today we are going to look at understanding the environment. Remember that from session 1 to session 3, we try to understand who an entrepreneur is and the types of entrepreneurs that there are. In session 4 all the way to session 8, we looked at identifying business opportunity, we looked at the business plan, we looked at the business model canvas, and then we went ahead in session 9 and 10 to actually look at how do you register a business, the management structures, as well as how do you manage a business. That was the last session we did in session 10. And I would like us to do a quick recap of what we discussed in session 10 before we go ahead. However, this tripod is one of the main things we discussed in session 10. And we said that the tripod is at the heart of the whole entrepreneurship course. In other words, the entire entrepreneurship course is divided into 3 things. Session 1 to session 3 happens to do with understanding the entrepreneurial personality, who is an entrepreneur. And then the rest of the sessions all the way to 9 look at the business opportunity. How do you identify opportunity? How do you do a business model canvas? How do you do a business plan out of those opportunities? And then eventually, now we want to look at how do you organize the environment, or how does the organizing environment help you in working in your business. So just again, a quick recap of what we said about managing a business in session 10. Now, one thing that we need to know is that management is one key issue for every business, and several businesses are dying because they are unable to manage themselves well, or the managers are unable to do a good job of executing on the task. Now, it's important for you as an entrepreneur to understand the issues in management. And so I'll take you through this definition of management, which is very, very, very all-encompassing. Let me take that again. So I'll take you through this decision. I'll take that again. So I'll take you through this definition of entrepreneurship, which includes a lot of the key terms in understanding what management is. So the point is that starting a business is one thing. You need a certain set of skills when you want to start a business, and those are skills of searching for idea, exploiting the idea. But when you finish doing that and you have a business going on, you now need to manage the business on a day-to-day basis to become a profitable venture. So essentially, from the slide, we are saying that management involves a process of setting goals. What it means is that the entrepreneur should be able to look at the business and say that, look, you know what, 4 years from now, this is how we see ourselves as a business, or 5 years from now, this is how we see ourselves as a business. And once you set those goals, you need to be able to plan towards the goals, and you need to be able to sit down strategically and plan. So several companies will have strategic planning, which is very important, a little bit different from the business plan that we learned, but not too different from the business plan as well. So you now have to sit down and plan and say that, look, what can we do to be able to make sure that we are able to execute on the goals that you have set for ourselves. Then now you need to organize and allocate resources. So the entrepreneur needs management skills in terms of organizing resources, in terms of allocating resources, and then also in terms of assigning and directing people. Now, as a manager, you need to understand that you run with a vision, and you need to be able to organize everybody in your organization towards that vision. You need to paint the vision for them to understand and see the vision that everybody else, that you are seeing. So it's absolutely important. And then we are saying that in the process of managing the business, you need to motivate those that you are working with. And if people are not motivated, there is no way they can be able to execute on the task. They'll become very bored, or they'll live in the midst of that. So you need to be able to encourage your people. You need to be able to motivate them. You need to be able to incentivize them for them to be able to work with you. And in motivating them, the goal of the motivation is to ensure that implementation happens. So whatever it is, the goal that you have set to plan, you have set for yourself to execute, you need to be able to motivate these people so that you can be able to implement the goals that you have. And one other thing that is absolutely important in the whole process of managing a business is to understand the issues of controlling, reviewing, and then taking corrective actions, because the planning is a process and there are things that may not go according to plan. So you have plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, and as you go along the line, you are able to see whether this is the right route for you or the other way might be the right route for you. So for instance, you want to be a world-class barbering shop or barbering salon in your area, maybe in about 4 years, and for the first 2 years you see that no, there is no way you are going to make it happen. You might want to adjust your plan a little bit and say that, look, maybe we can say 6 years, but then what do we put in place to make sure that within the 6 years we are not going to shift the goalpost again? So maybe there are some skills that you need to put in place, or there are some assets that you need to buy, or there are some ways you need to treat your customers. You need to put all those things in place, and you need to be monitoring them with time. You don't have to wait for 6 years before you check. No, every week, every day, every hour, every month, you need to have parameters for checking all these things, and these are absolutely important. So this is a quick recap of what we said in session 10, which has to do with managing the business. Having said that, I want us to move swiftly into the discussion for today. And today our discussion is essentially about understanding the business environment. And building from our understanding of entrepreneurial tripod, we get to see that the environment is one of the key things for every entrepreneur to understand and to know in order to be able to work very well as an entrepreneur within a certain environment. No business exists in a vacuum. No business exists in a vacuum, and every entrepreneur works within one environment or the other. And these environments, we can actually call them ecosystems. So when you look at the world today, some of the hotbeds of entrepreneurship, or some of the places where entrepreneurship thrives very well, is because there's a very conducive environment in those areas. One of the best places in the world today is the Silicon Valley in America, and that's where you have places, companies like Apple, companies like Google, companies like HP, companies like WhatsApp, all being started. There are several billion-dollar worth companies that have started in the Silicon Valley because the environment is particularly conducive for entrepreneurial activity. Another place that we know as an entrepreneurship hotbed is the country of Israel. And Israel, in the midst of all the wars and the battles that is going on around them, Israel seems to be one of the places that is producing a lot of entrepreneurial activity. Why? Because the nation has taken it upon themselves to provide a conducive environment for entrepreneurs to work within. So the environment is absolutely important for every entrepreneur, and the environment within which you find yourself can make or unmake you as an entrepreneur. So first of all, we need to understand the Ghanaian business environment. We need to understand some of the attributes of the environment. The entrepreneur has the task of scanning the environment to see how he can be able to position himself in the environment. So briefly, these are the issues in the environment that we call the parameters of the environment. And we use the acronym LEPESTI. LE standing for legal, P standing for political, E standing for economic, S standing for social cultural, the T stands for technological, and then the I standing for institutional. Now, these are all players in the environment that can actually make or unmake your business. And you need to understand these institutions and these environmental parameters and see how it works for or against your business, and know how you can be able to position yourself as an entrepreneur in this ecosystem of Ghana, as we call it. First of all, when it comes to the environment, the point that we keep making is that the entrepreneur needs to be proactive with regards to the environment. The entrepreneur needs to consistently scan the environment to see whether the laws in the environment are favoring him or not. And before an entrepreneur also wants to move from his country or from his region into another region to go and do business, the entrepreneur needs to understand the environment before he can be able to move to wherever he or she would want to move to go do business. So with regards to the parameters of the environment, the first one that I would like to talk about is a legal environment. And the legal environment essentially deals with some of the laws that are in the country that you are going to do business. So what are the issues with regards to the setting up of the business? Are there laws prohibiting people from doing certain kinds of businesses, or the laws are generally encouraging people to produce certain kinds of businesses as well. So particularly in Africa, when we find some of the laws that we have, let me pause. I've paused. Okay, let's take it. So particularly with the parameters of the environment, here we are looking at the legal environment. And as an entrepreneur, when you're moving into a market, you need to understand the legal implications of whatever business that you are doing. Now, certain kinds of businesses, the law forbids in some countries, and certain kinds of businesses, the law does not forbid in other countries. And you need to be able to understand the legal implications of whatever governance systems are in the country that you find yourself. So there are companies, a lot of companies that spend a lot of money in lobbying politicians or parliamentarians in order to be able to, kind of enact some laws that skew towards their business. For instance, a new technology was developed by a company called Google, or Alphabet as they've changed their name to be. And they developed driverless cars, but to use those driverless cars in parts of Europe, the laws in Europe were not flexible enough to allow them to come into the market. So they need to spend a lot of money lobbying those markets to be able to understand the things that go about in those markets, and to be able to even permit them as a company to bring their product or services into that particular country. In this case, the driverless cars. So with regards to the laws as well, in Ghana, what are the specific laws that you have to do with businesses? And looking at the business registration, we looked at quite a number of acts that has to do with business registration. So you need to understand some of the bylaws that are there. You need to understand some of the specific status in terms of the business that you are doing, as to whether you are into manufacturing, whether you're into production, whether you're into agriculture, or whatever it is that you are in. It is your job, it is your task to be able to understand some of the legal issues that are there and be able to play in a way that supports you. Here, we are saying that as an entrepreneur, you need to be proactive. You need to be scanning the environment. You need to be the onus lies on you to understand what the legal implications of your business might be. And then also we are saying that the government is supposed to provide flexible laws that aid in business development in various countries. And in Ghana here, the government should be able to take it upon itself to also provide some kind of flexibility in terms of tax laws. Particularly tax laws have become a big thing in our country today. And all these flexibilities should be available for every entrepreneur to be able to thrive as an entrepreneur. The next thing that we want to talk about is the political environment. Particularly in our country, when government changes, some businesses are kicked out of business, some entrepreneurs are kicked out of business, and some businesses thrive depending on which government is in power. And this is particularly difficult for a lot of young entrepreneurs who are struggling, because once you get a deal with a government, a new government comes and your deal cannot be honored any longer. So every entrepreneur needs to understand the political climate that you are working in, and those who are good enough. Some companies actually decide not to be partisan, and some companies actually decide also to cross carpet in terms of the political parties that they affiliate themselves with. But the decision is that of the entrepreneur to make. But the point that we are making here is that the government itself must have policies, political policies that encourage entrepreneurial activity. The third point that we are going to look at is the economic environment. And I always ask myself, particularly in terms of exchange rates, in terms of interest rates and all of that. Now, if you are in a country and you are doing a business, and if you go to a microfinance institution, you might be probably earning or paying an interest of 40% upwards, 36%, and some as high as 62% per annum on interest from loan. Now you are competing with another entrepreneur who is in another country, probably paying back about 4% interest per annum on a loan. How do you compete? Right from the onset, you are kicked out of business because you are going to pay an interest of 64 or 34, and he's paying an interest of 4. So you can see that the economic indicators here are sometimes very weak in a lot of areas. And so it is a task of government to ensure that all these interest rates and exchange rates and the tax issues are very convenient for entrepreneurs. Why can't we give some entrepreneurs tax holidays when they start their businesses so that they can be able to have ample time to recover and get on their feet before we start taxing them? I think that some of these things are things that the government can put in place to ensure that entrepreneurs are doing well. Now, as an entrepreneur, you also need to understand the general demand in the market. You need to know whether the market is conducive enough for the product that you are going to produce. If you want to produce a luxury commodity in this part of the country, you need to know that you would probably have a very small market, and you need to position yourself for that as well. The next thing I want to talk about is socio-cultural environment. And several entrepreneurs are able to get the legal environment right, the political right, the economic right, but they fail with regards to the socio-cultural environment. Why? Because these are very soft issues that do not appear to be a big deal until a lot of entrepreneurs realize that it's too late for them to change these things. And the socio-cultural environment actually has to do with belief systems that are have been embedded in societies. And some of these belief systems take very long time for them to be corrected over time or for them to change over time. And so it's absolutely important for every entrepreneur to understand some of the cultural values, some of the belief systems that are in certain businesses. A bank started doing banking on a van. So they take the van around, what they call banking on wheels. They take the wheel around, and then they get to a marketplace and they ask women that, you know what, instead of coming to the bank to come and put your money here, we have actually brought a van to you so that you can actually bank with you. And for that was very convenient for the market women. What the company did not know was that in Ghana, when a market woman says that she's going to a bank, she expects the bank to be at a particular place. Therefore, when she closes from work or when she closes from the market and sees that your van is no longer there, it's a very big problem. She thinks that maybe you've run away with her money. She doesn't feel very secure. And that is why it's absolutely important for you to understand the environment before you deploy any innovative ideas that you may have. And these are things that I've come across severally, and so many companies have suffered because they never understood the socio-cultural environment before they went into the business that they did. The next one that we need to understand is technological orientation. In Ghana, a lot of the millennials, just like elsewhere, elsewhere around the globe, a lot of millennials understand the technological issues that are emerging. But there are a significant proportion of the population that is not that tech savvy. And so businesses that want to do a lot of tech issues or want to be technologically fashioned may have difficulties in probably getting inroads into the market. And so, I mean, what we speak about with regards to the diffusion of innovation technology, which is something that you should probably spend some time in trying to understand diffusion of innovation and see how some of these technological interventions get diffused or get accepted by the entire market. So I would actually be glad if you could actually go back and read a little bit about diffusion of innovation, and then we can have a discussion in the chat room about that. So technological orientation or the technological environment is absolutely important for every entrepreneur. You might have very good ideas, but maybe the technology available in your country may not be able to help you to be able to deliver those ideas that you have because the platforms are very weak and porous. So these are things that the entrepreneur needs to understand before he enters any market. The last but not the least is the institutional environment. Now, we've had quite a number of challenges with some of the institutions that we've had. However, there are some institutions that have done creditably well in terms of how they encourage entrepreneurship in the country or how they encourage business activities in the country in general. With regards to the institutional environment, we have three key categories. We have the regulatory institutions, so these are institutions that regulate whatever an organization does. And let me just say this, some institutions may have more than one activity or more than one role that they play within the institutional environment. So you might have institutions that regulate whatever you do. We might have institutions that promote business activity, and we can have institutions that facilitate business activity. So you can have an institution like the Ghana Investment Promotion Center, and the Ghana Investment Promotion Center essentially is to help promote trade and to facilitate trade among entrepreneurs, and to also to bring in some kind of investment into the country. So these are promotional, that particular institution, we can call it a promotional institution as well as a facilitating institution. And then we have an institution such as the Ghana Revenue Authority. We have institutions like the Registrar General's Department, and some of these institutions also tend to regulate the activities, and as particularly the Ghana Standards Authority, regulating the activities of a lot of entrepreneurs in the country. The Food and Drugs Authority, also helping to ensure that the kind of products that are on the market are safe for people to consume. So there are quite a number of institutions in the country that help promote entrepreneurship as well. Now, our challenge is that some of these institutions have not been forthcoming, and it will be very good for government to push in a lot of resources to finance some of these institutions to actually do what they were set up to do. We have institutions like the National Board for Small Scale Industries helping support young entrepreneurs in this country. And if some of these institutions can be well resourced, I think that, or we think as lecturers of this course, that they can help promote entrepreneurial activity in this country to a great extent. So this has been session 11. We've just tried to understand the business environment. We've mentioned some key issues in the environment. And the point that we are making is that it is the role of the entrepreneur to be proactive. The entrepreneur needs to understand what is happening in the environment. The entrepreneur does not need to be reactive, just sitting down and waiting to see what happens in the environment. But he needs to be proactive. He needs to scan the environment consistently, generate information, and even put some money into research and trying to understand some of these things before he actually starts the business. And while you started the business and while you're running, we expect that the government also has a role to help you push your business forward. And like we said in session 3, in terms of the entrepreneurial attributes that we have, internal locus of control. An internal locus of control is when the entrepreneur decides that, look, in spite of the government's role to provide a conducive environment for me, I will also do my part to ensure that I continue to remain profitable as a business. So I would encourage you to understand the environment, to look at some of these institutions that have been mentioned, and there are a lot of links in the slide for you to click on and read more about all these institutional environments. Thank you very much and have a good day.